I am a 28 years old female. And I do babysitting on the weekends to make extra cash. There is one family I definitely should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute, and if I don't have another job, it's easy money. My issue is, the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but finally I started asking, as it made it impossible to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could go to brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her she needed to be on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 o'clock rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Nothing. Still calling and texting. Finally, it is midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined, but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also text her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on read. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, finally called the cops, non-emergency line. They showed up and I showed our agreement in text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I am awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I tell her I followed through on my threat, check the police station. She cursed me out, I hung up and went to bed. The next day, she sends me an essay saying the kid's father was called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have just waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask, which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer, or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days, and his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. I was born when my parents were both 19, and my only other brother, let's call him Josh, was born when they were 42. They divorced shortly after Josh was introduced to the world. He was 4 months old at the time. And they both wanted nothing to do with the child. At the time, I was 23 and I was living alone with my then girlfriend who was 21, now my wife. And I'd done my best to convince at least one of them to take care of young Josh for his sake and the family's sake. But they refused adamantly and said that I should be taking custody of him instead. So I became legal guardian of my brother and he's been living with us for the past 12 years and things have been going really smooth for us. Josh, now almost 13, has been calling me Dad and my wife Mum and our 2 children, 4, 9 years. His siblings, and he has absolutely no idea about his real parents, and to be honest, I let all of that slide. He has no idea that I'm really his blood brother and not his father, and I'm starting to feel guilty and a little weird. Some of my uncles and aunts come to visit occasionally and they are really disgusted at the fact he calls me Dad. And they are surprised I haven't told him the truth. They constantly messaged me, talked to me in private and I cannot chat to them without this one particular topic rising up. Badgering me to let him know already but I refused. I discussed this with my wife and she thought it would be wrong to tell him the truth because none of my parents wanted to take care of him. And I'm the only person in the world who gave him the father figure everyone deserves. I feel that he has the right to know what he is to me and what I truly am to him. But he's suffered enough already and I just want things to continue how it is. I want to point out me and my brother have 2 different fathers. I lost my father last year to cancer. He left me 90% of his stuff including his family home that was left to him by his dad. It's been in their family for over 100 years. My brother and my dad didn't have a relationship but he did leave him $10,000. My mom was pissed at the will reading but since she got $10,000 she couldn't do anything about it. For the past year me and her live okay, together. She went on acting like it was her house like before, which I had no problem with till in May my brother and his girlfriend moved in. Without even asking me. They're messy, entitled, and rude. I told them in July I want them out by September because they don't pay for anything nor wash a dish. In August they announced they were pregnant and my sil smugly said, "Guess we won't be moving out now." It didn't go down well, but when I told them I wanted them out my mom and brother basically laughed in my face. Well, the past few months have been hell. They become worse than before and my mom enables it then demands me to treat my sil like a princess because she's pregnant. I once had to wait outside McDonald's till they opened to get her a McMuffin. Well, here where I may be the asshole. Because my sil is pregnant, she eats everything she sees, like the cupcakes my friend made me for my birthday. She ate all 6, didn't even get to try them. I can't even make my lunch the night before because when I go to get it, it will be gone. She'll have a smug look on her face while rubbing her belly, then laugh and say, "I couldn't help myself, blame the baby." If I put stuff in my room, my mom will open the door with the spare key. Sil can go through my mini fridge. Well, a week ago I was running late to collage. I didn't have time for my breakfast or to make lunch, and I had to go to work straight after, so all I had that day was a bar of chocolate. When I got home I was starving. I made myself dinner. While it was cooling down I went to use the bathroom. I must have been in there 10 minutes at most. By the time I came out she had 70% of my dinner ate. And I literally lost my shit. Of course she started crying. My mom and brother started screaming at me for making her cry, making excuses, like how she couldn't help it and it was my fault for leaving food around her. Well, I had enough. I told them get out, just like before I got mocked. But here's the thing, back in October my uncle offered me a life-changing amount of money for the house. I called him up crying a few days ago explaining the situation. He said he'd buy the house but he will evict my mom and brother. They OFC didn't take it too well and I have had to stay with a friend. I've been receiving texts and I'm being tagged in multiple posts on social media. I'm starting to think I'm the bad person now. So for making my mom and brother homeless? If I sell the house to my uncle I will lose $100,000, but he's always been good to me. And it's one of those situations where I'd sleep better knowing it's gone to someone in my dad's family. My mom told me because of my age I wouldn't be taken seriously if I tried to evict them. If I evict them and continue to live in the house along with the high financial costs, I don't think they'd ever let me live in peace. My mom has health issues and my sil will have to move in with her parents. They won't allow my brother, so I'd be splitting up a young family. In my mom's words,